Hey guys, welcome back. There is something that kind of bothers me about Overwatch. I'm certainly not the first person to bring up this game's flaws, and while I don't find the game utterly repulsive, I'm not exactly its biggest defender either. But this is a question that has been on my mind for a while. Why are we doing this? I mean, this right here. Why do we need to take control of this random room? Why are these people trying to stop us? What in this room is worth killing for? There are some people who will say, now hold on, Stutter, this is a video game, and video games need objectives. Aren't you overthinking a standard King of the Hill mode? There doesn't need to be a why, just get in there and shoot the bad guys. Normally, I would agree with that 100%. Overwatch, however, puts a lot of emphasis on its lore. The story of Overwatch doesn't just exist to give the characters some background motivation, it's meant to come across like an epic world-spanning saga of good versus evil where this ragtag group of fighters come together to fight the evil conspiracy. The animated shorts that are used to market the game push this. Much of the game's advertisement comes from making these cinematic short stories that have music and emotion and characters with personalities. These set up a story that never gets told. All of them use the same formula, which is as follows. Introduce a few characters, hint at and then expand upon their backstory and motivations, have an action sequence, an emotional climax, and then stop without ever progressing the larger story. I mean, Winston's short introduces Winston and Athena, hints at and then expands upon his backstory, which is followed by an action sequence where he beats the bad guy, and then the emotional climax where he recalls the Overwatch team to active duty. Diva's short? Well, it introduces Diva and her worthless friend, talks about her backstory a little bit, shows her personality and motivations, and then there's an action sequence followed by an emotional climax. And then look at that, everything's fine. I want to make it clear I don't hate these short little movies. They are wonderfully directed and produced, the animation is always stunning, and the music is almost always top-notch. My gripe with these isn't that they're low quality, they aren't, it's that none of them, not one, ever moves the story of Overwatch forward. It's a permanent, never-ending state of setup and hype building for a story that isn't going to happen. Ooh, Sombra's working for Talon, and she was supposed to kill an influential Russian CEO who makes super mechs, I guess? Wait, hold on, Talon is trying to stop Russia from having super mechs, and I'm supposed to believe Talon are the bad guys here? Anyway, Sombra doesn't kill the CEO, instead blackmailing her and threatening her child so that this woman can do some unspecified task for Sombra later. Then Sombra teleports away and tells her teammates she quote-unquote failed. Now that's a good setup for a story right there. Two factions playing cat and mouse games, one character using a faction for her own ends while pretending to be a good little bad guy. There's blackmail and lies. Too bad nothing ever comes of it. I'm serious. This little storyline may as well end the moment the short does. Nobody mentions these events in any other short. Nobody calls attention to the fact Talon failed to assassinate someone I assume is an international figure. Imagine if some guy took a shot at Vladimir Putin. You'd be talking about it for months after the fact. But in the world of Overwatch, the moment the short is over, wipe it from your minds because it may as well not have happened for all the effect it has on the wider story. What bare-bones story that has been told has literally nothing to do with the actual game. Why are Overwatch team members flying around the globe to capture small areas and push vehicles from one location to another? There is no reason. Why are Widowmaker and Tracer on the same team despite the animated shorts showing them as mortal enemies? It's okay, they have vaguely antagonistic dialogue with one another, so you know they still aren't friends. Hee hee. Now the Overwatch team has gone out of their way to say that the game and all interactions between characters in the game are non-canon. And that just raises so many more questions, because the characters talk about and reference events in the cinematic shorts. So are the shorts also non-canon? Or is this an alternate universe where everything's the exact same, except Reaper and Ana somehow teamed up to stop a cart from being pushed, despite each of them having tried to kill the other in the past? This is stupid! The lore of Overwatch is a giant knotted up ball of wet pasta. It may be intricate, but it also falls apart the moment you apply any sort of pressure. Which takes me all the way back to the objectives. Why are we doing this? Why does the Overwatch team want to take control of this ancient temple? Is it strategically sound? Does this help the effort against Talon? But if they are fighting against Talon, why is Sombra here? Shouldn't she be trying to stop us? She is Talon! I realize that video game objectives are often rather arbitrary when looked at from a logical standpoint. We capture points and push carts because it's fun for a game. But what I hate is that Overwatch doesn't even try. They just do standard video games objectives, not caring that it doesn't fit their whole save the world story. Now you might say it would be too hard to justify video game objectives and have a good story. You can only have one of those. I disagree, because a video game already came out with very similar gameplay to Overwatch, very similar objectives, with each and every mission being justified through the story and world building, and that game is TF2. TF2 you push carts, you capture points, you do King of the Hill, capture the flag, all standard video game objectives at this point. How does TF2 justify doing these seemingly random actions? Like this. Many years ago, Zephaniah Man was convinced by his 2 idiot sons to buy up massive amounts of gravel pits and badlands in America. When he arrived, however, he discovered that the land he had bought was worthless. As revenge, he left all his worthless land to his 2 sons, Redmond and Blutarch, split up exactly evenly, knowing they would fight over the land for the rest of their lives. Redmond and Blutarch hired 2 teams of mercenaries, the red team and the blue team, each with the objective of taking land from the other brother. This leads to an endless stalemate where no progress is made, and tens of millions of dollars are dumped into funding this pointless proxy war fought by moronic mercenaries who have trouble tying their own shoes half the time. These mercenaries are who you play as, by the way. The soldier, the spy, the medic, all on the payroll of one of 2 idiot brothers trying to take worthless land from the other idiot brother. This neatly explains everything. The objectives seem pointless because they are. We fight on the same maps over and over again because the war is an endless stalemate. The war is an endless stalemate because the 2 leaders are idiots, and nobody questions the war because the mercs fighting it are also idiots. TF2 is a story of the blind leading the blind to fight the blind, and it's honestly one of the funniest stories I've ever had the pleasure of being exposed to. All this is gotten across through online comics, the Meet the Team videos, and background details snuck into the multiplayer maps that we actually play on. By actually taking time to sit down and write a story, the makers of TF2 were able to tie together everything with a bow on top. I'm not here to claim its story is Gene Wolfe levels of genius, but it's beloved by many for a reason. Not only is it good on its own and just funny, it slots so perfectly into the actual game we play. Overwatch has ostensibly intelligent characters, so that kind of story wouldn't work, but again, they don't even try. One way to make the story and game not seem incongruous is to split up the characters. Say on offense, you play as Talon characters or lone wolf bad guys like Roadhog and Junkrat, and then on defense, you get to play Tracer, Winston, Reinhardt. There's a good mix of good and bad people for each role, so it wouldn't be impossible. Then it would feel like 2 sides in a global conflict instead of a messy mush of contradictory characters whose moral alignment amounts to little more than a snappy one-liner delivered just before the mission starts. I don't know. I'm not saying my idea is perfect. It would take an insane amount of work to split the cast up that way, but at least it would be something. I like stories. I like writing and reading stories. I like watching and listening to them. There isn't a wrong way to tell a story if you're passionate about writing, which is why the biggest sin when it comes to writing is to not even try. And that is what bugs me about the fundamental disconnect between Overwatch's gameplay and story. It's held together by the barest possible threads, and none of it makes any sense because the writers decided not to write. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, go ahead and sub, it really helps the channel. If you disagree, leave a comment explaining why. If you just want to comment that I'm trash and my opinions are garbage, that's fine too. Alright, video's over now. Get out of here.